enough? I could not understand what was happening. It turned out that there was an abandoned newborn baby in the maternity clinic where my mom and dad worked. His mother left him because he was born with Down syndrome. And of course, my valiant parents could not just turn the other cheek. They promised me that nothing was going to change, that they would love me as much as they did before, and even more. We were all going to make a great loving family, and stuff like that. It calmed me down for a while, but I was only 8 years old at the time, so I didn't quite know what Down syndrome meant and why those kids were called special. There was a big party on the day when my parents brought Ethan home. All our relatives and close friends came to see the newest member of our family. Everybody looked at his face and just melted. I remember when I first saw his face. It was cute, but strange and very different from any other face I'd ever seen. He was like an alien to me. First, that little thing didn't seem to be a problem, but time went on. By the time Ethan turned 4, I had entirely realized what my parents meant by special. He looked more and more strange. He still couldn't walk or talk properly, or do the simplest things that any kid his age was already able to easily do. So he had to be watched every single minute. Otherwise, he would fall or hurt himself or drop something. Besides his mental state, Ethan also had a lot of problems with his health, so my parents had to take him to the clinic pretty often. They treated him like an angel and got really happy when he succeeded in putting on his shoes by himself or getting the spoon of oatmeal right into his mouth without dropping it on his shirt. And of course, me getting numerous first place awards in every possible contest was nothing compared to Ethan's achievements. Not only did my parents have no time for me anymore, but they made me babysit him and watch his every move. It was so tiring, but I never complained. My mom and dad always believed that this was the most important challenge for our family. I can't imagine how disappointed they would have been if they knew I had another point of view. So I kept all my feelings to myself, but of course, one day everything came out. I turned 15 years old and I felt like I could not stand it anymore. My 7-year-old brother was a nuisance every day of my life. As he had become a big boy, it got hard to keep track of him. I would find him in our neighbors' backyards eating corn or sitting on the cold ground and staring at the apple tree for hours. And there was no power in the world that could make him move. Whenever we went out, everyone around would stare at us, point fingers. Once, we all went to a friend's party. There was a very handsome guy there. I think I liked him at first sight. And then our eyes met and he marched straight toward me. He asked what my name was. He had the most charming smile in the world. My heart was beating so fast. I was about to answer. Suddenly, I found myself lying on the floor in a very awkward position. And my brother Ethan was sitting on top of me and crying out some complete nonsense. When I got up, I saw that the guy I was talking to was now standing to the side and laughing his head off with some other girls. I can't imagine how furious I was. I hated Ethan's guts. It seemed like it could not have gone any worse, but it turned out that it could. Ethan was now big enough to go to school. He would have to spend most of his time there, so I was really looking forward to the moment when that would start. I had hoped it was going to be my release. Well, I was mistaken. My parents wanted Ethan to feel normal and to communicate with ordinary children. So they did their best to convince the teachers to let him go to my school. And they succeeded. Unfortunately for me, primary school and high school happened to be in the same building. So I would have to take my brother to school and pick him up after every day. All my friends would now know about my special brother, and that was the last thing I wanted. It was literally a complete disaster. I was lucky I didn't have to be near him on his first day of school, because my mom and dad took him there themselves. But when it was time for me to take him home, he just couldn't make himself go to his class. All my friends were sitting in the schoolyard. They would see me with him. When I finally went to pick him up, I couldn't find him in the classroom. I heard some strange noise from the corridor, but I was Ethan lying on the floor, his classmates standing around him and laughing. Ethan was crying. When he saw me, he called out to me and asked me to help him, but I just stood there and watched. I didn't do anything. When the children finally saw me, they ran away. I didn't even help Ethan get up. I was surprisingly calm on the way back home. And believe it or not, I didn't feel sorry at all. The only thing I was thinking about was whether Ethan would tell my parents what had happened or not. And he did tell them what happened. My mother and father were so mad. They could not believe that their daughter had stooped so low. Now I had fallen off my parents' pedestal. All that made me hate my brother even more. He took my brother. I convinced them that everything was going to be fine, that I would be a perfect sister and gatekeeper. But as soon as they left, I called all my friends and threw a party.
You know he's going
Everything was
to.
perfect. We were having so much fun. Nobody paid much attention to Ethan. And he was calm and even a little bit scared because Mom and Dad were not around, so he didn't bother us much. My friends brought different snacks, so he was busy tasting all of them. I thought that for the first time in my life, I felt happy. When suddenly, I saw Ethan sitting on the floor and breathing heavily. We all rushed to him. His face was red and his lips were swollen. There was a piece of chocolate cake on the floor nearby. Chocolate cake with nuts. How could I have forgotten? My brother was terribly allergic to nuts. He could have suffocated at any minute. We had to get him to the hospital as soon as possible. I vaguely remember how we got to the hospital, and how the doctor called my parents on the phone, and my friends' judgmental looks. Luckily, Ethan survived. I was just sitting at his hospital room door, waiting for the wrath of my parents. When they arrived, Ethan was awake. They asked him how it all happened. My heart sank. And then he suddenly said, "I found nuts in the closet and ate them. Sorry, Mom." I was speechless. That little boy was absolutely aware of what had happened. He was also aware of how I treated him, but he didn't tell on me. He was just an innocent, pure soul. So, what does that make me? I burst into tears and told my parents the whole truth straight away. I also cried out all my reasons and thoughts that had been piling up over all these years. I felt like I was disgusting and useless. Of course, my parents were shocked, but I didn't get the feedback I was expecting. My father gave me a warm hug and asked me if I wanted to take a walk with him. First, he was silent, but then he said, "I understand how you feel, Zoe. If you only knew." My father's eyes were red. He was about to cry, which was really unusual for him and scary for me. And then he told me a story. He told me that my mom and him once made the biggest mistake of their life. I was not the firstborn baby in the family. My mom and dad started dating when they were in high school, and my mom got pregnant. They were both only 17, and they were scared to death. My mom gave birth to a baby, but it turned out that the baby was special. Their daughter had Down syndrome. My dad said that they were not ready for that. Their parents were also against the baby and persuaded them to not ruin their lives. So, my mother and father gave up their own child. Soon afterward, they came to their senses and tried to get her back, but it was too late. Their baby daughter had died for unclear reasons. My parents were never able to forgive themselves or to get over that tragedy. That was the moment when they decided to become obstetricians and to make amends for what they had done. And that's why they adopted Ethan. I was listening with bated breath. The story absolutely twisted my consciousness. Everyone has their skeletons in the closet, I guess. Even my seemingly flawless and accomplished parents. Nobody's perfect and everybody makes mistakes. It's all about whether you realize these mistakes and try to become better or not.
The incident happened when I was much younger, and since then I don't go into stores without someone with me. Let me explain. When I was about 6, I was in a small convenience store with my dad, who wasn't really paying attention to me. I was fooling around farther away from him down the aisle. While my dad was looking at something, I noticed a man standing in the aisle across from the one we were in. He was tall with dirty blonde hair and slight scruff on his face. His body was facing the shelves, but he was looking at me. I was young, so I didn't fully understand back then, but I knew people shouldn't be staring at others like that. Not to mention, he creeped me out big time. I tried telling my dad I didn't like the stranger, but he brushed me off and told me not to pay attention. As a kid, this really bothered me. He was my dad and was supposed to protect me, but I guess finding what he wanted took priority. Anyways, I walked away from the stranger and closer to my dad. The guy didn't look at me after that, or for the rest of the time we were shopping. When my dad and I were at the checkout, I was standing a few feet away from him looking at some toys that were displayed on sale. The guy from earlier was there again, this time closer. I started to walk back towards my dad, but the guy tried to get in between me and him. By that point, I was beyond creeped out. I was flat out terrified. My dad hadn't looked at me the entire time, and I couldn't fight off someone as big as him. He had tried to speak to me, asking for my name. how I was doing and why I was alone. I didn't answer any of his questions, and I could see he was getting slightly frustrated. When he took a step forward, I let out a quick scream. Every head at the checkout area turned towards us. The man took off through the entrance doors. Not even a second later, a woman I had never met asked me if I was all right and where my parents were. I told her my dad was at the checkout counter, and she told me to go to him and explain what happened. I followed her instructions, and he didn't seem all that concerned. He just sort of shrugged it off and said, "Well, you didn't get kidnapped." When we got home, I told my mum what had happened, and she was very mad at my dad for being so indifferent. I remember her telling him he's no longer allowed to go shopping with me anymore, and that she'd be the one to go with me to stores. Since then, I'm extremely wary and cautious of going into stores alone. Even today, at age 19, I always bring my mum with me or a trusted friend. I only ever go alone if I absolutely have to, but that's not very often. I haven't seen the man since, and I hope to never see him again. What about you guys? Did something ever happen to you that changed?
I'm not saying our life has become easier. It's still hard for me to deal with Ethan. I am not a saint, but I kind of accept it all now and feel happy. I have more sympathy and love for my brother and more understanding toward my mother and father than I've ever had. Tell me about the most horrible mistakes you've made in your life. How did you deal with them? My story was very sincere and honest, so I hope you're not going to judge me much. Anyway, I would be glad to read your comments and stories. Feel free to share this.
Hi everybody, my name is Lisa. I'm 18. I live in Seattle together with my family. Why am I saying all this? Because I have no idea how I should begin telling you my story. After all, it will be about my dad and my mum who are married, and also about my father's girlfriend, and about my mother's girlfriend. Yes, you heard me right. Until recently, I did not know that things in my family were so and about my mother's girlfriend. Yes, you heard me right. Until recently, I did not know that things in my family were so complicated. We lived the most ordinary life, except that my dad's work was connected with the city of Vancouver, where he was from. So my father often went there on business trips that lasted for a long time. Sometimes we took my mother along, but for some reason, I was never allowed to go with them. Well, now I understand why. It all started last summer when Roberta, my father's distant relative and a very good friend of his youth, came from Vancouver to visit us. My mother told me that Roberta had already visited us on several occasions, but it was a long time ago when I was a little kid, and that is why I did not remember her. After that, my mother showed me Roberta in pictures from their wedding day and repeated twice that Roberta was a good person and that I should be nice to her. This struck me as strange. I had nothing against Roberta, so why did my mother bother to mention it at all? The second strange thing happened after Roberta had already arrived. We all together enjoyed dinner and a movie one evening, so when it was time to go to bed, the question about where Roberta should stay came up. We had a free bedroom, and my mother insisted that Roberta's one evening, so when it was with us. But Roberta said that she didn't want to cause any inconvenience. At the same moment, it turned out that Roberta had come to Seattle for 2 weeks, and while my mother insisted that Roberta shouldn't have spent so much money on a hotel, Roberta advised that she didn't want to disturb us. My father just kept silent until he revealed that he was going to Vancouver the day after tomorrow. This whole conversation only made me more and more confused. First, why did they pay so much attention to this nonsense? And secondly, what was Roberta going to do in Seattle for 2 weeks if she knew that my dad was leaving? After all, Roberta was my father's relative and friend. Didn't she come to visit him? They finally came to a strange compromise. Roberta would stay in our apartment for a few days and move to a hotel. But even during these days that Roberta was supposed to stay in our apartment, I practically never saw her. She spent all her time with my mother, and one evening, my mum and Roberta went to the theatre and then went somewhere else.
Yo, that's some bull fucking shit.
Until finally it was so late that Mum sent me a message that they were not coming back home and instead spending the night at their mutual friend's house. Honestly, I did not understand how could it happen that my mother and Roberta had a mutual friend, and why we had been arguing about where Roberta should stay if she had another accommodation available. Given all that, I had too many questions in my head that sounded silly, even for me, so I never asked them. Finally, 2 weeks passed and Roberta left. The next day, my father came back from his business trip. I missed him and was really glad to see him, but my mother gave him a hug with barely a smile. After Roberta left, she became a little sad and looked deeply immersed in herself. And after about a month, when my mother suddenly informed us that she had some urgent business in Vancouver, I finally realised that something was definitely happening. But I had no idea what to do with all that, so I chose the simplest option. I began to eavesdrop on my mother's phone calls. Very soon I heard my mother, after a quiet conversation with someone on the phone, whisper to the speaker, "I'm already listening." I was so shocked by what I had heard that I almost jumped, and the door that I was hiding behind squeaked loudly. Mum frightfully turned around, and I thought that it was a good time to attack. So I demanded an explanation from her, and to be more convincing, I added that Dad was also very interested to learn that something was happening. Mum paused, and then just showed me the name of the contact she had been talking to. It was Roberta. "Lisa," my mum told me. "Roberta is my girlfriend. We have been together for quite a while. Dad knows everything."
Oh, what the fuck? Dude! What fucking shit? And your dad is fucking cool with that. That's some weird, you have a fucking weird family. Roberta is your girlfriend. To be honest, I thought father had like two. That really just like, so like, and your dad is like, as long as we're together, I don't mind you. If Roberta is your relative that's literally dating your freaking fiance, and you're cool with that, you actually need help. I thought it had something to do with the father. No, it got something to do with the freaking mother. I can't wait till it's in the game so I can see what happens. Look at you. That's some bullshit. 3 HP. 3 HP.
He also has a girlfriend in Vancouver.
Boys.
But when I heard her, I almost fainted. When I was able to speak again, I wanted to ask my mother a million questions, but she asked me to wait until my father came home from work. It would be better for all of us if they explained everything together. And so we all gathered around the table for an important conversation. It looked like an ordinary conversation between parents and their child, if not for its topic. My parents were going to explain to me where their mistresses had come from. As it turned out, Roberta is a lesbian. She really is a relative of my dad, and she was his close friend 18 years ago. So Roberta was one of the first people my dad invited to Seattle, where he moved to live with his fiancée, my mum. Roberta and my mother met at my parents' wedding and soon became very good friends. Dad was even a little worried that his wife was stealing a friend from him, although he should have been worried that this friend was stealing his wife from him. My mother never thought that she was attracted to girls, but nevertheless, there was some kind of chemistry between her and Roberta, and their feelings grew from friendship to romance. But they did not get together then. Roberta was still a friend of my father and could not betray him, and my mother was already pregnant with me and did not want to ruin the family. Dad didn't know anything, and Roberta simply stopped coming to visit them for 5 years. But my mother and Roberta could not forget each other, and their feelings remained strong, regardless of the distance between them. Roberta came to visit under the pretext of seeing me, but in fact, she came to tell my father the truth. To the great surprise of both women, my dad was really understanding. Together with my mother, they decided pretext of seeing me, but in fact, she came to tell my father the truth. To the great surprise of both women, my dad was really understanding. Together with my mother, they decided not to ruin their marriage, not only for my sake, but also for each other's sake. They still loved each other, my parents, even though their love differed from that of ordinary couples. They also enjoyed living together. As for Roberta, my mother and her see each other regularly, and that was perfectly fine with Roberta as well, since
Yes.
had any intention of leaving Vancouver. After some time, Dad also found himself a girlfriend. The situation with my parents and their girlfriend is very strange, but there was one very important detail in it. Everybody in this relationship was completely satisfied with it. They even considered themselves happy people. And when I found out about everything, the last burden fell from my parents' shoulders. So I had no choice but to accept the situation, though it was very, very strange. I hope you will not judge my parents too harshly, because they are just looking for happiness in their own way, and I'm happy that I was finally able to tell someone my story, because I could not tell anybody, even my close friends. Please like it, and don't forget.
Have you guys ever been in a relationship that you couldn't end? I'm kind of in one of them now. I hope you guys can give me some kind of advice because it really seems like a dead end to me. My whole life, I've always been involved in different sports. So injuries and nights at the hospital don't scare
What's up, JJ?
me. I'm pretty used to fractures, bandages, stitches, and other stuff. That's why when my nose appeared to be broken after another hockey game and I had to visit my doctor, it didn't surprise me much when he said it was broken. But this time at the hospital, it was totally different from all the others. I saw a girl. Well, I mean, it wasn't the first time I saw a girl at the hospital, but when I saw this girl in particular, who had the same bandage on her face as I did, which clearly meant that she'd also damaged her nose, I felt like she was different from the others. I remember how I was just laying there on the examination table, trying to come up with funny jokes about our noses, to get acquainted with her, and waiting till nobody could hear us. I don't know why, but the idea of talking to her made me nervous. Well, before, I used to be far from being shy at all. Then I heard her sobbing, and that was it. My perfect chance to say something to her. I asked her how she got her injury, and she said she was going to piano practice, but she fell down awkwardly and hit her nose on a chair. I said to her that
Yo.